Okay. Could you hear me properly though? I hope I'm okay. Sawa sawa. All right. Back here. Okay, because at first, at my basis, I'm an artist. I don't think of curation as something separate from my art. I think curation is an extension of it. And I think instead of working with a medium or a sculpture or a painting, the whole room becomes the artwork, right? The way that you put the artworks together become the artwork. So I think with my first exhibition, I kind of approached it like this. And I mean, with all the exhibitions I've curated, I kind of trying to approach them as putting together a big installation of art. And one thing I really enjoyed doing, I guess my process with the concept is, first of all, just thinking about what is important to you and what is interesting to you. And sijui kama bado there are as many social development goals, exhibitions as they were when I first moved back. Lakini nilivyorudi, they were like the UN, like how to save water, how to whatever, how to alleviate poverty, how to, you go to these exhibitions and it's so not only just depressing because it's like, okay, yes, we're in a poor country, let's make art about it, but it was not inspiring. I didn't feel inspired. So I was like, okay, what kind of exhibitions do I want to see myself and do I think other people will find interesting? And the first exhibition we did was called Silence. And Silence was basically inspired by, it was around the time, it's always the time when there was a lot of restrictions on freedom of speech. There was a lot of drama with, newspapers, people being silenced. So it was a bit cheeky, but I was like, okay, this is a topic that I think we need to talk about. So that was the concept of the first idea. These other two are completely just things I thought would be fun. Otherworldly, the concept just came from, how about we have an exhibition about anything that doesn't necessarily make sense? And a bad idea was exactly that. What is a bad idea? And questioning the concept of a bad idea. So I think with any concept and finding a concept, I think what is important, at least for me, is for me to find it interesting, for me to be able to have a conversation about it with people around me. So yeah, this was Silence. And looking at the first call for art, I'm like, this is so messy. But this is the first call for art we had when I was at Nafasi. And yeah, as you can, I just took the what is it called? Description. Wow, English then. It's just gone. I took the description of it because I wanted you to see just how much my descriptions changed as well. So this is so simple. We're inviting all local artists to have an opportunity to exhibit their work while interpreting the theme of silence. What does silence mean to you personally, culturally, or in the current context of our communities? That's the call for art. In my opinion, this is now, looking back, it's a terrible call for art because it doesn't really say anything. It doesn't make people think a little bit more about what kind of art it is. I mean, luckily we're able to get really good artworks, but going back to just thinking about the community and thinking about people, one thing that we started doing, and I'll thank Jesse and Kwame and kila mtu ambao alinisaidia kutafsiri, is having call for art in both English and Swahili. And this really helps not only challenging how to say things in two languages was also interesting. And I mean, Tanzania, it's mostly Swahili. So I think if you have a call for art, it is definitely important to have it in Swahili. And yeah, space. Space is a strange thing to negotiate. And especially at Nafasi, you're going to see later, in the main exhibition hall, there are these two table things that cannot move, and they used to drive me crazy. And I imagine space again, like you're imagining a dollhouse. And for me, drawing things helps a lot. So I'd imagine a dollhouse, and how do you move the furniture in a dollhouse to make it make sense? So this was an exhibition at the Hifadhi building in Zanzibar. And it was just a narrow corridor with another room on the side. And the whole exhibition was about light. So it was a small space, but because we didn't fill it up too much, and because we're kind of trying to create these illusions with the lights, it worked. So I think space is something to experiment with, and there's not like a copy paste method. I think you have to try, and sometimes you'll drive the people who are helping you crazy if you keep hanging, putting it down, hanging, putting it down. So yeah, I think very early on, I realized drawing things out and planning the space would be important. And for me, space is, I mean, when you think about going into your bedroom, you walk into your bedroom and you kind of want things to make sense. You kind of want to have, okay, this is where I put my keys. This is where I put my jacket. This is where the bed is. This is where the table is next to the bed. That's how I think about space as well in terms of an exhibition. How does it make sense for people to move around it? How does it make sense when people look at something? How does it tell a story? So just when you're considering space, I think consider color, consider how the eye moves. I often think about ukiwa unasoma kitabu, you don't read from left. I mean, unless you're reading a Japanese manga, you don't read from right down to left, you read from left to right. So when I look at a wall, I think, okay, where does the eye travel? How does the eye move to make it comfortable? So yeah, I started with the bright piece on the left-hand side, and then the darker pieces on the right-hand side. This is something I did and maybe did just because it worked for me, as there was like a main piece of work next to the title, which kind of summarized, which was kind of like a teaser, like this is, you know, a celebration of the artwork in here. And it usually kind of went with a color scheme, or it just was a striking piece of work. So for this exhibition, it was a Mania Bates piece. And again, I use this thing of like, when someone reads, it's like inheritance, and it's like, boom, there's this beautiful picture next to it. So I think that the entrance of the exhibition is, I mean, the whole exhibition is something important to realize, but the entrance of the exhibition, I always think about the audience's experience and how they feel walking through a door, how they feel seeing the title of the exhibition, and also how much power you want to give the title. Inheritance could have been very, very small, but this time I chose to make it very big, because it kind of becomes, again, part of the exhibition. The title of the exhibition is part of the space. It becomes part of the story of what you're telling with the artworks. So again, I want to remind you that your imagination is the only thing that is your boundary, right? This seemed crazy. Luckily, I wasn't there during installation. I should have been, but I wasn't there. But it turned out really, really great. It was co-curated with Asteria. And Jan himself was such a great artist with such a vision. And this video basically, yeah, it's like you're walking through the mitumba stalls and there are clothes hanging everywhere. And it kind of walks into this video space, right? So this idea of space, I think it's abstract. You can really create space. You can create mood. You can change the lighting. And I think I really would encourage you, as you are learning in this course, to really, as Darragh said, try find your voice as a curator. Try find what you think is interesting, how you can experiment with space and with people's experience and what they're going to remember. Okay. So, oh, I put this as agenda because I'm a little bit naughty. And, you know, I think as an artist as well, and as a lot of creative people, we try and push things in society. And I think a lot of my personal artwork can be political, but political in a way that was not going to get me into trouble. So, sijui kama wanakumbuka when the bureau de changes, the bureaus around town, they all closed. Yeah, I don't know if you remember that, but when that happened, we had an exhibition coming up. And I thought it was funny to create a room called Bureau de Change, as an ode, not only as an ode to, you know, kind of the injustice of how the bureaus were shut down, but also like to make people think about that, but also it worked because what is exchange and what is exchange in art? So we had this video art room called the Bureau de Change with 2 videos. And even with the silence exhibition, I mean, it's the same thing. Like you're trying to say something political without it being outright political. And I think that's the great thing about art and curation or anything to do with the creative medias is you are able to state things, you're able to question things without it having to be obviously political. Okay, now getting into more details. Community, first thing, this is a picture of Jessie reading a poem. I couldn't find a team picture of everybody, but one thing that is the most important thing, I mean, in curation is the people who you have working with you. And I think in Nafasi, it was just very lucky, a very small team, but everybody was hands-on. Jessie was my right-hand man, helping me with labels. And there were the interns, Martin, Khalif, there was Kwame, with all the technical stuff. So your team is so important. And something that, you know, I still have to work on is communicating with the team as well. I have a very difficult time taking an idea from my head and explaining it, especially sometimes if it's just is crazy. So having a team that trusts you and you being able to explain your ideas to your team is also really important. I was also very lucky that Rebecca would say yes to my crazy ideas. So I think Nafasi is such a great space because it is an experimental space. It is a community space. Yeah, so just shout out to the team. I said confidence here. As I was talking about the team not understanding you, this exhibition, Otherworldly, was about, I guess the name describes it, it was about things outside of the world, things of the imagination, magic, myths. And so I played around. I took a phone, painted it pink, and just put it on the floor. And you never know what people are going to do with things. And it's, I mean, for me, I find it interesting in general within my practice. So it was interesting how people would play with this object that was not a piece of art, but it was in a space, in an exhibition where it was talking about random things and magic and fun. So I think you need to trust yourself as a curator, and you don't always have to, I think it's important to know why you're doing things, right? So it's not like I just, for any exhibition, you can put a phone on the floor. I think it was very much specifically for this exhibition. The same exhibition, you see there's a circle on the floor. We also painted, this is, I think, they didn't like me very much. We also painted circles of different colors on the floor just to make it, just to give the room a different feel, because the floor was red, then it was black, then it was this, but we're like, okay, let's make the floor something different. So when you're considering space, going back to considering space, it's not only the walls, it's the ceilings, it's the floor, it's literally everything that you can touch and everything that you can see. And a very, I mean, if everything is important, but finding the art, I found it quite challenging in the beginning and Dar starting off, just because I didn't know a lot of people. I didn't know the artists, but of course, one being a Nafasi helped, because you could just walk into an artist studio and be like, hey, I like that. Nayomba, Naichukua, I mean, you talk to them, you talk to the artist properly, but it was easy being a Nafasi. And this was a piece from Kalasinga, which I took, by the way. He hadn't finished it, which he should have finished it, but he hadn't finished it. But I really like this piece because it was talking about inheritance, but it was talking about inheritance in such a different way. So I think when you're looking for art, look for art on Instagram, look for art in your communities. The call for art is of course important, but I think as a curator, I think you actively have to go out there. You have to talk to people. It's part of the job to just be nosy, to be nosy, to be in people's faces. I think it's part of the job. So yeah, again, I thought this piece was interesting and different. This was otherworldly as well. I thought it was a different piece of art. And at the end of the day, I think curation is biased, because you're trying to put together something for the community, but you also have to bring together work that you believe in, work that you think is important. This was Sabrina's installation. It was so different. And she basically made these pigs, and the pigs represent politicians. And they're kind of like, I don't know if it was like the African Union or something, but anyway, it was representing politicians. So as a curator, I really like finding artists who are just thinking outside of the box, also doing different things, things that, again, people are not used to seeing. People who would come to Nafasi would want to experience contemporary art. I mean, Nafasi is a contemporary art center, and I think depending on what kind of space you're in, if I was curating an exhibition at a museum about history, that exhibition would look completely different from, the exhibition I'll curate at Nafasi. I don't even think I'll be interested in curating a history museum and history exhibition at a museum anyway. The more I curated, the more I realized that actually giving the art space, giving the art space in terms of not crowding it, in terms of making sure that when someone passes a piece of art, you're not overwhelming them. They're looking at one thing, they're able to process one thing at a time, I think is really important for me. This was a performance, it was a fashion installation by Makeke at the Silence exhibition, and you can see that the model has his mouth covered. And again, I really just liked putting different kinds of art in one space, just again to make sure that the audience is being challenged and being challenged to see things in more than one way, that one message can be translated through fashion, through video, through installation, through sculpture, through painting, through everything. I mean, it's so great how much art there is around. And I don't necessarily think a good exhibition is an exhibition with a lot of mediums. I think that's just how I work, because I have a very small attention span. So I like being in spaces where what I'm engaging with is always changing. But other times, if you're having an exhibition with just drawings, maybe it just needs to be drawings, maybe it just needs to be clean and small. So it's, again, really thinking about what you as a curator, you want to have people experience. If you don't think it's worth looking at, why should other people? This goes back to, I think if you care about something, you're gonna do well at it. In school, the subjects that you don't like, I mean, whatever, the subjects I never liked, I never did well at. And it's one of those things that if you like artwork, you're gonna make sure that it's shown in the best way. So don't work with art that you don't believe in. That's just my advice. Sometimes it's difficult to say no, and I've had many awkward moments where I was like, sijui labda badilishe kidogo. But at the end of the day, you need to be honest. You need to be honest with yourself, and you need to be honest with the artist that you're working with. If something needs to change, if you think something needs to change, say it as a suggestion. If the artist disagrees, then maybe you're not meant to work together. Like, you also mustn't force things. This, for me, was a great installation just because it caught people's eyes. And I think when you're like, these bottles right in front of you are going to live longer than you, longer than your children, I think it has a powerful message. The artwork was not complete without the audience. So the audience there were papers and pens, and the audience had to write to their future grandkids or whatever and put the messages in the bottles. So this is just another way of having art that engages with the audience, having artwork that questions the audience, you know, because again, it's so easy to walk into an exhibition, to look at a picture and to leave, and you don't remember it. But once you ask the audience to participate in a way, once it is them thinking, at least it stays in their mind. One of my favorite things that we did, which I never took a picture or video of, was having a scream room. In the Bad Idea exhibition, I'm like, okay, what is a bad idea? And I'm like, people don't like screaming. People are uncomfortable by noise. And that made me think, okay, why not create a room where people can just scream? So our little storeroom, we transformed it, and literally on the door it said, this is a room that you can scream in. That's all. Just a room that people can go and scream. And I was like, okay, maybe nobody is going to go into this room. Like, you know, Ngeshanga, people would go in there, close the door, and scream. They literally would let that out. So it was just interesting to see, you know, when you think about a community like Darragh and people, you think people are conservative or whatever, but being in an art space really gives people the opportunity to experiment and to have fun. Words. Another fun part about curation is writing curatorial statements. And I mean, this is just an example. I took 3 beginning paragraphs of random curatorial statements I have written. And I'll just maybe read the first one. When was the last time you walked under a ladder or past a broken mirror without thinking that perhaps you just sentenced yourself to many years of bad luck? So that was one of my, I think the second curatorial statement I wrote. And basically I approached the curatorial statement as a way to start a conversation, and as a way to introduce the audience to the exhibition. And sometimes curatorial statements can be boring. And I've written a lot of like blah, blah curatorial boring statements. And the last one I did, I just was like, okay, this is how it looked, by the way, on the wall. This is how it looked. It was upside down and people had to turn their heads to read. And the curator's note, this was for otherworldly, and no, this was for a bad idea. It was for a bad idea. And I was like, what is a bad idea? A bad idea is putting a curator's note upside down and not really writing a lot of information in it. So again, there are no rules to curation. I think the only rule is that you respect the art and you respect the artist and you respect the audience. But besides that, I think you can explore, experiment however you want to. And again, the words, as you hang a piece of work, the words are an extension of the space. The words are a tool. So words themselves can be taken as part of the exhibition. It does not have to be something separate from the exhibition. Cool, I'm kind of going fast now because I didn't realize how much I had to say, but this is the last part, relationships. And yeah, there is no exhibition without the artists. And I think it's really great to build a community of artists and to get to know artists and to support artists and to go to exhibitions. And that's the only way I think you're going to meet people and you're going to build trust. Because at the end of the day as well, me as an artist, I don't want to give my work to a curator I do not trust and I do not think this person respects or understands my work. So yeah, I think the relationship that you build with the artist is super important. More technical are like bios and statements and stuff. And this was one of the best bios and statements I've ever received from Tuki. And this was like his first one. And again, I think with rules, you're in the arts, I think you're able to bend rules. And the only thing an artist's bio and artist statement is supposed to do is to introduce the artist and the artist's purpose to the audience. And you can do that in whatever way. And Tukio Nana described himself as a contemporary idea that explores the blurring of lines between new ideas and now ideas. And that was it. That was his bio. And his statement, I mean, you can read that, but the artist statement number 2 was amazing. It just ends like, do you still laugh at mean jokes? I ate the McDonald's by the fridge with the Coke. And it just says so much about the artist. And yeah, I think, again, with statements and bios, advice is to get them as soon as you can. There were so many times that Nafasi were running around calling artists, emailing, please send me a statement, please send me a statement. So again, Jessie, I'm so sorry. But these are kind of the details that you need to think about, and you need to realize, okay, I need all the information from the artist. What do I need? I need the works before time. I need the floor plan. I need to communicate with the team. And another thing about just gaining artists' trust and paying attention to details is we started having the exhibition brochures, because again, people come into an exhibition and they leave, and how can you benefit the artist even more? And so we started making brochures more with like the artist's contact details, so that people can have something physically. They can be like, oh, I like that piece. Maybe I want to talk to the artist some more. So these are one of the ways that you can make sure that people have something, that people engage, that people remember who they saw. And also just having the artist there present physically always helped. And the last thing, don't forget to document, because I did. But I mean, at the end of the day, an exhibition as well can also go into artists' portfolios and on their websites and stuff. So I think Nafasi was great because there was always someone taking photos. But I think documentation is something that is easily overlooked. I didn't think about it. And yeah, there's so many things I wish I could show you that are just in my head that I just never took photos of. One of my favorite ones as well is we had a secret sharing room where we asked people to write down secrets on a note and just leave them on the floor. And some of them were really funny. One of my favorite ones was there's someone who confessed that they want to break up with their boyfriend. And it was just there in this room. Someone wrote down, I want to break up with my boyfriend and I don't know how to do it. So just providing that space for people to be able to express themselves, to be able to work through things, to be able to share even with strangers, I think is it's a special thing, and one of my favorite parts about curation. And that's all the things I have to say. So if anyone has questions, I feel like I need a break from talking.
First follow-up questions that I have. Do you feel like, as a person then in the middle of this, and as a curator and a person, like, do you feel any sense of responsibility while you're approaching any new project or in the projects that you choose? And what are those responsibilities?
Great question. Yes, 100% responsibility. Well, the first responsibility is to the artist to protect the art, which is very literally making sure that the art is safe, that the art gets stored properly, gets taken back to the person, but also how the art is perceived, and especially in Dar, being careful of the cultural context, and not making sure that people don't get into trouble. So as a curator, I take responsibility for the exhibition I'm curating in terms of if there is something that is controversial or there is something that might endanger the artist's career, I think I have to protect the artist as much as I can. I have to advise the artist. I have to make sure that the environment that the artist is being presented in is safe. Yeah, I guess that's what I think about when I think about responsibility, just the practicality of taking care. I mean, curation, I think curator, the term was I might be lying, hey, but I think it means to take care of. I think the curator's first job is caring for the artwork. And then again, the second job is responsibility in terms of context, in terms of how you deliver a message, in terms of, cultural context, I think is very important.
Okay. Cool. And also, I mean, you've spoken a lot about your interest in doing like political work or maybe quite controversial work. So in terms of being interested in things, again, sort of crossing that line between you and your work as a curator, when did you come to be interested in it? Was it part of your curatorial, was it after you became a curator, or did it precede that? And the second thing, are there new things that you're interested in that you didn't realize you were interested in while in the time that you've been a curator?
Okay, first, what things, okay, I think what I'm interested in didn't change because of curation. I think how I interpreted them changed because of curation. So I've always been interested in breaking the rules. I think I've always been interested in how to transform spaces and how to transform people's minds and how to make them think about things they haven't thought about before. So this has always been my interest. I'm just naturally interested in people and curious about how ideas form and how people decide things and how people become judgmental and how people create a set of rules that are sometimes harmful or beneficial. So I've, in general, within my art, within life, in life in general, I'm interested in, you know, people and rules. So as a curator and within my art, I guess it extends because as a Tanzanian and knowing the, I'm trying to be politically correct here, knowing the boundaries and restrictions, I became more interested in how to work around them. And the more I curated, I think the more I became interested in how to start conversations. And I think for me, starting a conversation, and as soon as people start talking, I think change happens and people start noticing things and start talking and start coming together. So for me, I think what's most important is this going to make people conversate? Is this going to change someone's opinion? Is this going to question someone's opinion? And I think sometimes I might not even agree with the other side, but I always think it's good to show all sides of the story and not only push my agenda, because we're all different. And the only way I think we're going to move forward is if we're able to have difficult conversations. So I don't know if that answers the question. I went on a whole Miss Universe rant there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this also, I think I got just a couple of more questions. Like, how do you further your own curatorial practice when you're not working on like an exhibition or when you're not doing something specifically project-based?
I go to exhibitions. I think, I mean, it's difficult to further curatorial practice. I mean, at least for me, because I never fully considered myself as a curator. And I think it's just something that I've become more comfortable with because of engaging with more artwork. And I think if you love art, and Kilamtu is here because they love art and they want to be surrounded by art. So just one of the things is reading. I know not everyone loves reading, but there's so many great resources about exhibitions happening around East Africa, Southern Africa, outside of the continent. I think there's so many interesting exhibitions. And now with Corona, what I've been doing is going to virtual exhibitions, which is not the same. Not the same. And I really miss being in a physical exhibition. But I think, yeah, expanding curatorial, when you want to expand knowledge on anything, I think you have to experience it a lot in many different forms. So just go to exhibitions, read about it. be around art, have artist friends, you know. Huge.
But are you a curator first or an artist first? Like, just both. And another question is the challenges that you faced as a curator in Tanzania, like things that we can all relate to. What are the most challenges that you personally face?
Okay. I am not a curator first or an artist first. I am a human being who experiences life. No, I had a whole deep thing with this answer. No, Kosababu, because before I'm a curator or an artist, I'm a member of a community, right? I see things, I hear things, I interpret things, I have my own beliefs. So before I'm a curator or an artist, I am a person with an opinion. And that's, at the end of the day, what you need to be a curator or an artist. You need to be a person with an opinion. So I don't know